Yeah. Happy New Year, Cape Fear. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
All right. All right. We spent the New Year with a friend watching a football game and watched him very sad as he walked out of my house. It was sad. We were all even rooting for his team, and then it didn't work out. I was like, oh. So I don't know what you guys did, but I got to kiss my wife and start with friends, and it was a good night. All right, so we're continuing our journey through 1 Corinthians. We're at 1 Corinthians 13. I get to preach this morning on, it's my favorite topic to preach about. I absolutely love preaching about love. It is the number one thing I like to preach about. I don't get to only preach about that because, that's not all Scripture's about. There's a lot more in there, but this is the one thing that is kind of centered to Christianity. And Paul makes it a very important point. A few years back, there was a presidential election, a while back. And one of the candidates was kind of hanging his whole election or his persona on his war medals. And I had a friend that was really close to me that I'd known for quite a few years who served with him back in Vietnam. And they all they despised this man to such a point in Vietnam. All of the men got together that served with him and built this campaign against him because when he was in Vietnam, he got this Purple Heart, he got these war medals. When he's in Vietnam, he would tell his fellow men that he was there because it was going to bolster his political career. And so we have this ideal when it comes to heroes and when it comes to role models in our society and people that we look up to, we have this ideal that they all should be doing it for the right reasons. And as soon as we find out there's an ulterior motive, that they're in it, they're not serving their country to serve their country, to serve their fellow citizens, but they're serving their country so they can build their resume to get the awards to run for political office, takes away from everything that they did. When we find out people who we look up to are only in it for the money, it takes away from everything that they did. And so, as a culture, as a society, if you found out that a pastor was preaching for the paycheck, okay, a different church, a big paycheck, if you found out a pastor was preaching for a paycheck, and not because he loved the congregation and loved the Lord, you would dismiss everything that he said because he's only in it for the money. Or only in it for the power. Or only in it because he likes it when people listen to him. Again, different church.
Joe lost you.
We're naming names now. We have these people we look up to. We have these heroes. We have the people in our own church that when they do these things, if we were to find out that they were only doing it because they felt obligated, or they felt that that's what they were supposed to do, and not because they loved you and cared for you and actually wanted to help you and build you up, you wouldn't feel good about them, but you probably wouldn't even want them to help you out. It's common in our culture, and we all look at it exactly the same way. And so we're going to start with 13:1. And we've been talking about the gifts of the Spirit. And so Paul continues, and when we read chapter 13, it generally doesn't stand on its own, just love. It is in context to the rest of the book. But 13:1 he says, "If I speak in tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and I have all faith, so as to remove mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all that I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing." And so this this definition of love, this idea of love that we get into that's read at weddings and used all the time. He's saying, look, if I do all of the things, of all of the power, of all the things of God, if I have love, I have nothing. Or if I don't have love, I have nothing. He begins, he says, we talked about tongues last week, and we're going to talk more about it next week. He says, look, if I can speak all the tongues of all the men and of the angels, if I can do that, and I can be in front of everyone and just put on this amazing show, if I can do that, and yet I don't have love, I'm like a clanging cymbal. I couldn't find a cymbal, right? So this is what I got. And that is super annoying, right? I got like problems with my ears, it hurts my head, but I know you don't like it, but I want to point something out. Neither does God. This is the show that we put on, and this is what it's like to God. Just kidding. I want you to think about that. I've been to the churches where, and again, we talked about this last week, but I've been to the churches where speaking in tongues is the number one thing you're supposed to seek out. And that's the church I got saved in. That's the church that I kind of grew up in a little bit. And somebody's got a real symbol, it sounds like. That was interesting. That's the church I grew up in, but there was so much a lack of love. There was so much a lack of love that is what it sounded like to God. And none of you like that, and neither does God. But he continues, and he continues to make it worse. He says, and by which... And he says that if I have prophetic powers and understand all the mysteries and all the knowledge, and I have all the faith, like, look, all the faith where I can move mountains. I know everything there is to know about God. I mean, I have a PhD and a D-Min and a bachelor's and a master's and there's more. I can have all of the number or all the letters behind my name, but without love, he says, if I have not love, I am nothing. Done everything in the world to build myself up. But if I don't have the love, I am nothing. If I give away all that I have, if I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. Do you know how much I give to this church? Not commonly said here, but in a lot of churches. Do you know how much I give? I give the most, therefore I have the biggest say. Did you see what I did for this church? I laid it all on the line. But without love, I gain nothing. And so if you think about Jesus and how he treated the Pharisees and how they were the creme de la creme of the religious elite, they were sure that everybody saw who they were and how they honored him and how they glorified him. Everybody saw it, and yet they had absolutely no love for their fellow man. And so we build off the back end of the spiritual gifts, which is what we're talking about. And people focus so heavily on the gifts. And yet they just ignore the love for each other. If you're going to start anywhere, if you're at the beginning of your Christian journey, if you're in the middle, or if you're near the end, if you are anywhere in your journey, love is what you that should be the center focus. Jesus said there are 2 commandments that matter the most. What were they?
Love the Lord with your mind, body, and spirit, and love your neighbor as yourself.
Love the Lord your God with your mind, body, strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so it seems unfair to say to love, and he doesn't say, and make sure you seek out all the spiritual gifts. It's unfair to say to love the two most important commandments. It's unfair to say that if he doesn't tell us exactly what that means. And sometimes teaching to love is a very difficult task. And so when you got two little ones in the house, every parent knows, or three, every parent knows that when they're in the back room and things get quiet, there's a laugh, right? When things get quiet, you know something's up. Something is happening at that moment, right? Like they scream like that, and then all of a sudden, quiet. Next thing you hear, we don't need to act this all out, but next thing you hear, kids screaming, crying, and running to mommy and daddy. The other kid's walking behind a little bit slower, like, Kid number one looks at you and says, he hit me. Kid number two, He hit me. Kid number two, well, I had to. What do you mean you had to? He made me mad. Well, look, just because he makes you mad doesn't mean you have to hit him. That's the emotion I feel. I have to act on that right now. They don't say the emotion part, but like I'm paraphrasing a little bit. So they when children have these issues, our job as parents is to what? To teach them how to control them. To teach them how to feel an emotion and act in an appropriate way. And so, really what we're teaching them is what I want to teach you today. Is that no matter the emotion that you feel at the time, what you do next is a choice. You can choose to love someone even if they make you mad. No, it is. I know, this is what you guys are thinking. I know couples that are at each other's throats all the time. Because they have that emotion, so they must act on it right then. I know men that will act on an emotion or some physical feeling that they must act on right now. Because that's what I have in front of me. I must do it. It's the same thing as that we treat our children and we try to teach them from a very young age. I know women that will do the same thing and their mouths will run and say some of the most vitriol, hurtful things you can imagine to the ones that they love. We as a society have gotten very bad at actually loving each other and making the appropriate choices when we experience an emotion. When you have an emotion and you act on it, that's immaturity. I know you don't want to hear that because we're grown people, but that's the thing that we try to get our kids to understand at a very young age. When one of them takes the control, then the other one just hauls off on them across the face. The same thing, that is the same thing we do to each other in our marriages, in our relationships with friends, with family, with coworkers, with just people walking down the street. We have this emotion of anger or irritation or anything and we act on it. Or on the other side, we have this emotion of, oh, she makes me feel good. I'm going to stray. Oh, you don't understand. This woman at work, she gets me. There's nothing going on. She's my work wife. It's not real. I'm using example. I promise. She knows how much of a problem
Your
this is.
real life is your work one.
It's true. I actually need to work with my wife.
Yay!
It's amazing. I think you just hijacked the sermon. That's all right. So it's easy when we talk about these emotions that we feel in anger, but then there's the emotions that make us feel good that we want to act on all the time. Because if it makes us feel good, then it's obviously a good thing, right? Not the trail of destruction that we leave in our wake. Doesn't matter what you do. If you do not have love, it's like what? I'm just using it as an example. You don't have to
I
make it.
understand.
So now we get to 1 Corinthians 13:4 through 7. And this is what you guys know. Love is patient and kind. It does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. There's not feelings. I'm not saying we remove the emotion from love, because that is a real emotion. What I'm saying is the love in itself is a choice. It's a choice of an action and or attitudes on how we treat each other, treat those that we love. It's a sad state of affairs when there are people in your family who get the worst end of you while everyone else gets the better side. And I think we all kind of catch ourselves doing that sometimes. But if Paul is saying, look, you can do all the religious things of the world. You can do everything. You can paint the picture as you are the most sanctified individual in the church. And yet if you don't have love, none of it matters. And so this is what love is. Love is patient and kind. Love is the attitude of patience. And so if you say that you love someone, if you love that person next to you, then patience is the attitude you should have towards them all the time. It's a hard one sometimes, especially if we're talking about our spouse or our siblings who annoy the snot out of us. I mean, if you have a sibling that annoys you. He's just not here, so I can't talk smack. And it's kind, it's an action. An action of kindness is showing someone love. So when there's someone on the street and you have that random act of kindness, that's love. That is what love is. Especially when you put it on YouTube for all the world to see. But see, then that takes away from it, doesn't it? When you're doing it for the clicks and the likes, it takes away from it. Then you're not doing it for love. You're not doing it for love, you're doing it for the show. Look what I have, everybody. I gave $20 to a homeless man. Love does not envy or boast. It's not envious of those around us. It's not envious of the one that we hold so dear. It does not boast about how amazing they are. We do not boast, love is not boasting about all the cool stuff that we've done for the church. It's not boasting to make sure that if we do something here, that everyone gets to see it. Everyone must know about it. And sometimes that boasting can look like standing up here and saying, hey everyone, did you see that I painted the office? Well, it can also look like, this last weekend when I was here by myself painting the office, I noticed that there was something wrong with one of the doors. Is there anything that we can do about that? That's the humble brag. Notice, I painted the office by myself, but I really want to focus on this doorknob. We do that in our lives. Hey, honey, I took these dishes to the sink for you and put them in the dishwasher. Is there anything else you need me to do? I made sure I let her know that I did something for her. He gets it. Boasting comes in different colors, different veils. And so does envy. Hey, that's a nice car. We pay you too much. Hey, where'd you get that? How come you get to have that? Man, that family you have, that's an amazing family. That's the compliment. And then the follow-up is, I wish I could have a family like that, but my family just doesn't do what they're supposed to do all the time. That's the ending. It is not arrogant. I repeat, it is not arrogant or rude. Love does not place itself on a pedestal of arrogance, of where someone thinks that they are better than those around them. Love is not rude and saying hurtful, mean, and spiteful things just to dig under your skin, just to hurt your feelings. Notice it's not talking about the ooey gooey feeling you have every time you look into your wife's beautiful eyes. That emotion is real and it exists. But the love is the action and the attitude that you do to act on it. Notice it's not the feeling you have when he doesn't put the toilet seat down at 2 o'clock in the morning when your butt is cold and wet because you fell in. Notice it's not that. It's the action and the attitude that you have and the follow-up on how you act towards him. When he wakes up in the morning and you tell him you love him, not when you crawl back in bed and you kick him so he falls out of bed and doesn't understand what happened. Love is not arrogant, it's not rude. He defines love as a choice, as an attitude that we have towards each other. It does not insist on its own way. My way or the highway. It's my house, my rules. My church, this is how it goes. My project, my company, my team. It's your team, but I want to do it my own way anyway. It is not irritable or resentful. Now we get into a little bit more difficult ones, right? Love is not irritable. We're not irritable towards each other, and we are not resentful for the positions in life that we are in. We are not resentful for the person that we love. We are not resentful for the family that God has given us. We are not resentful of the friends that He has placed in our lives. We're not resentful for those around us, our neighbors that we are supposed to love, no matter how exhausting or draining they may be. Can you imagine approaching your relationships with this attitude of love? Your marriages, your siblings, Can you imagine the relationship change that would happen if this is how we acted towards each other? Your neighbors, your mailmen who are, never mind. The people that are in your lives that you are supposed to love, but they make it oh so very difficult. Can you imagine that if this is how you approached it, the incredible relationships that would blossom and the glory that it would bring to God? Because other people are going to see it and be like, how in the world do you do that? It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. He messed up. He's going to get it. Ooh. Oh, he's going to get what he deserves now. Finally, they caught him. I mean, I'm not trying to take away from justice as being something that is so important. But us rejoicing in the wrongdoing is what we are not supposed to do. That is not a loving thing. Who loves like this? When I've preached about this in the past, I've really focused on the type of love that it is. The word that's used is agape love. And I've done the lesson on the different loves, but I'm not going to focus on that. This is the agape love. This is that godly love. This is that love that we give with no expectation of getting something in return. This is that love that we can only do through the Holy Spirit in our lives. This is that love that we can only do when we've given it over to Him to help us, give us the strength to love like this. I know that sometimes when a man loves like this, other people look at him as if he is weak because he lets things go that shouldn't be let go. But I'm telling you, it is a man who is stronger than anyone else who can love like this. This is agape love. This is God's love. This does not make someone weak. This is a strong man. This is a strong woman who can love like this. Who chooses to love like this. And that's what I want you to walk away with, is understanding that I don't care what happens to you. Like the little kid who runs up and says, I had to hit him because he made me mad. He had that choice. Just as you do as an adult, as a mature adult, to have and make the choice on whether or not you are going to love or be unloving towards that person in your life. Towards your neighbor, your spouse, your siblings, your children, your parents, anyone, your co-workers, your pastor. It's a choice. Love bears all things, it believes all things, it hopes all things, and it endures all things. Means it never tires. So when it says it bears all things, it never tires of supporting those around them. And that can be exhausting. It believes all things. Love never loses that faith. It hopes all things. It never exhausts itself of hope of the future of what can be. And it endures all things. Love never gives up. That was a translation from a theologian named Thistleton, and I just love the way he put that together. And he continues, and he talks next about the permanence of love. And I worked really hard at trying to come up with an illustration to kind of illustrate this next scripture, and I struggled really hard. Because everything that I came up with, I thought about would offend someone in the room, and then you would hear nothing else that I said. And so, thankfully, God gave me an example last night with grandbabies running around. And one of them was holding a dinosaur in his hand. little plastic dinosaur, and he was shooting the other two. Okay? And shot the first one, and he goes, and he dies on the ground. Shoots the second one, and she dies draped over the top of the first one. So we got piles of bodies in the kitchen. And he looks at me and he's like, "Rawr." "Rawr, buddy. Just slayed your cousins." Yep. I mean, that's what it was like. It was just bedlam everywhere. So when we think about when we were kids, and then I can't remember who was standing there, and I probably wouldn't say it anyway, but whoever's standing there is like, you remember when we had imaginations like that? Yeah, when we were kids, man, like, I was like, anything could be a gun. Anything. You can turn anything into a gun. Or an animal, or whatever that we did. And we have those things that we grab onto as children. But then as we grow, as we mature, as we age, what do we do with those things? They kind of go by the wayside. Now, mind you, there are adults that I know who have never let go of playing with their toys, have never let go of playing with their things of youth, which is why I chose not to choose, specific examples. But I know that the things of my youth, the things that I was really into, I have kind of put aside as not important. And it's funny because even the older I get, even at this age, the more I mature, the more things that I used to think mattered that were insignificant just don't matter at all. They just don't matter. They don't matter. It sounded like he said they matter. And so, verse 8 talks about how love endures. It never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. So now faith, hope, and love abide. These three, but the greatest of these is love. He goes right back to the spiritual gifts. He goes right back to it. He's like, look, everything you know, everything that we have today is a partial representation. It is all going to go away. And he's addressing the Corinthians specifically. And so when he goes into this, when I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. He's specifically addressing the Corinthians, saying, look, we are supposed to be exercising these gifts, showing the fruit of the Spirit. We're supposed to be loving each other, and yet you are like children, immature in your lives. There's an old show that was on TV, probably not something, from a pulpit that you've ever thought would be, but it was called Mad TV. And there was this guy, and his name was Stewie. And so Stewie was this real tall dude, but he was a child, right? And he would play probably a toddler, and he would always be annoying his mom. And he'd walk up and he'd say, "Mom, Mom, Mom." And like the mom would be talking, he's like, "No, Mom, 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 Mom." And he'd be pulling on her shirt, and she was way shorter than he was. And she'd look and she's like, "What, Stewie?" And he's like, "Look what I can do! Look 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 what I can do!" These things, this is what we look like in church sometimes when we're trying to put on this show so everybody can see, look what I can do, look what I can do. Do you realize it's the same as the noisy gong?
Rejected.
Test me. The Corinthians are in the church, and Paul's addressing them like, you have no love, you are not not glorifying and honoring God. You are acting as children. You are stuck in your childish ways. You're shooting each other with plastic dinosaurs and laying bodies in the kitchen. You guys are acting like fools. He said, when I was a child, I thought that way. I reasoned that way. But I've grown up and I put that aside. He's like, all of these things that you think matter, they're just a partial. They're imperfect. And then he looks to the future of when Christ is going to return. And he says, look, he's going to come back and it's going to be perfect. We can look at this mirror, this foggy 2,000-year-old mirror. We can look in this mirror and we can see just this partial image that is just, we don't see it all. It is backwards. We're looking in this mirror and he says, for now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. Is that it's imperfect and it's dim and we don't know exactly all of the things of God and the Christ and the mysteries of the faith. We don't know them, but when Christ returns, we will see him face to face. And when that happens, he closes out. So now faith, hope, and love abide. And of these three, but the greatest of these is love. So he will return. Christ will return. And love is to carry us there. Along with our faith and along with our hope. So this morning as we leave, we're coming into a new era of the church, and we've been building and growing, and it's been amazing. And now we have people in seats who've been voted to take over ministries and kind of help run the show, right? And those positions need to be handled prayerfully. Those positions need to be handled with love. I know there's going to be times when you do things in your houses, in this church. I know there's going to be times when you feel like you're unappreciated. And it's not about the appreciation. It's not about receiving. That's the love. This is the love that we're supposed to do towards others without anything in return. Now, on the flip side, we are supposed to be kind to others when we love and giving them that affirmation, letting them know. Never can I hear from you that when you act a certain way or you're unloving towards others, I never want to hear you say, you just don't know us. You just don't know me. That's just who I am. Well, that's the old man. That's the man that should be dead. It's just how we get along. Well, y'all suck. I love a different way. Well, then you love an improper way. No. My love language is acts of service. Okay? There's a whole lot more in what love is. But making excuses. And I feel like that's what's so easy to do is we walk away from here and we make the excuses of why we can't love like this. Why we can't treat each other like this. Why we cannot honor and glorify God like this, because that's what this is. Instead of actually making the decision to love each other. Get past those childish emotions and feelings that we just can't seem to get by. I'm not saying the emotions and the feelings aren't real. Hurt is real. Pain is real. Love is real. But just like we try to teach our kids that you don't get to act on everything that happens, Paul's teaching us the same thing. It's like, look, guys, You can do all the good things, but if you don't have love, you are nothing. That's hurtful. None of it matters. And so this week, today, I can't tell you just to say, okay, now just go love people. Because that's not how it works. Back in the day, I was a very unloving man. Very. You did one thing wrong to me, woo, Bo. You were wrote off. Cut out. No more. I learned to love, and I'm not saying I love like this, not yet, but man, this is how I want to. I'm a whole lot closer to this than I was. But the only way I learned to love like this was I spent a lot of time in this book. And I spent a lot of time in prayer with him. And he transformed me into a brand new man. I quit making excuses. I quit running. I quit standing on the anger and the hate that was fueling me. And I spent time with him and asked him to change me. And he can do that for you. If he can do it for me, he can do it for you. He's done it for much more hardened criminals than me. And so if you have some excuse in your head as to why you can't love, you can't be the man or the woman that God has called you to be, you can't honor him, you're fooling yourself. You're running from God. I don't care who they are. I don't care if they're the wrong political party. I don't care. It seems to be the most divisive thing in our society at the moment. We are called to love and rejoice in the truth. Please pray with me. Father God,